The afternoon sun spilled over the cul-de-sac in golden streaks, the kind of day where you expected to hear sprinklers clicking, kids laughing, and the distant hum of lawnmowers. Mrs. Harper was in her kitchen, rinsing a handful of strawberries when the sound broke through. High-pitched, uneven, her daughter's cry. It wasn't the kind of whimper she made when she scraped her knee or lost a toy. It was raw panic. The bowl clattered into the sink, strawberries rolling down the drain as she tore out the back door. Emma. Her voice rang sharp across the yard. She rounded the hedge, heart pounding, and froze at the sight. Emma was tied to the old oak near the community playground. Her arms were pinned awkwardly behind her, her hair tangled against the bark, and her cheeks streaked with tears. The rope looked like jump ropes knotted together, cinched tight enough that her small wrists were reddened. Standing not 10 feet away, grinning like it was all some grand joke, was Jacob Whitfield, Karen Whitfield's boy. Mrs. Harper's chest tightened. "Jacob, auntie her right now," she yelled, sprinting toward the tree. Jacob didn't flinch. He tossed the loose end of rope in his hand like a cowboy practicing for a rodeo, smirk curling at his lips. "So I couldn't be king of the treehouse," he said casually. "So I made her my prisoner." Mrs. Harper dropped to her knees beside Emma, tugging at the knots. They were double-looped, tight for a child his age to have done. "You think this is a game?" she snapped, glaring up at him. "You tied up my daughter." Jacob shrugged, utterly unbothered, his sandy hair falling into his eyes. "Yeah, so." She didn't listen. "Prisoners aren't supposed to like it," Emma whimpered, her voice cracking. "Mommy, it hurts." Mrs. Harper's blood boiled. She pulled harder at the rope, finally loosening the first knot. "You're cruel, Jacob." Cruel. Before she could finish freeing Emma, another voice rang out, sharp as a blade. "What's going on here?" Mrs. Harper didn't have to turn to know who it was. Karen Whitfield's voice had a way of slithering into every argument in the neighborhood, especially when her son was involved. She appeared at the edge of her perfect lawn, crisp white blouse pressed, sunglasses perched like a crown of judgment. "Don't you yell at my son," Karen said, her tone syrupy with mock offense. She strode forward, heeled the sidewalk as though she owned the pavement itself. Jacob was just playing. He didn't mean anything by it, playing. "Mrs. Harper shot back, still wrestling with the rope. "He tied up my daughter to a tree. Do you have any gay idea how terrifying this is for her?" Karen gave a little laugh, the kind designed to dismiss the entire situation with one breath. "Oh please. Kids these days barely play outside anymore. I should be thanking Jacob for using his imagination. Boys would be boys." Emma's muffled sobs punctured the argument. Mrs. Harper finally yanked the last knot free and gathered her daughter into her arms, holding her tight against her chest. Emma's face burrowed into her shoulder, trembling. "Look at her." Mrs. Harper's cracked with fury. "She's terrified. Your son humiliated her, hurt her. And you stand there, defending him." Karen crossed her arms, tilting her chin upward, that same smug smile plastered across her face. "If you have an issue, take it up at the next HOA meeting. We handle disputes civilly here. You know the rules." Mrs. Harper nearly laughed from the sheer absurdity. "Civilly? My daughter was tied to a tree like some kind of animal. And you're worried about HOA procedure." Jacob kicked at the dirt, trying to hide a grin, watching the adults argue like it was another layer of entertainment. His mother's defense only emboldened him, and Mrs. Harper saw it. The way his shoulders squared, the spark in his eyes that said he knew he could get away with anything. Karen said smoothly, "Go inside. Mommy will take care of this." The boy obeyed slowly, but not before throwing one last mocking glance at Emma. He mouthed something only Mrs. Harper caught. "Crybaby." Her fists clenched at her sides, nails biting into her palms. She wanted to scream, wanted to drag Karen that her son was no innocent angel. But Karen was untouchable in this neighborhood. HOA president, self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, and enforcer rules that only ever seemed to apply when they benefited her. Mrs. Harper rose to her feet, still holding Emma close. "If you don't discipline your son, someone else will," she said, her voice low, shaking with controlled rage. Karen's smile didn't falter. "Don't threaten me. It's unbecoming." Emma stirred in her arms then, lifting her tear-streaked face. Her little voice was barely a whisper, but it carried like a spark into dry tinder. "Mom," called Dad. The word silenced everything. Mrs. Harper blinked, throat tightening. She smoothed Emma's hair back, pressing a kiss to her temple. Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Please." "As if calling your husband will change anything. I'm sure he'll find this just as silly as I do." But Mrs. Harper knew better. She could already picture the storm that would come when he heard what happened. And for the first time all afternoon, a flicker of calm threaded through her anger. She adjusted Emma on her hip and met Karen's gaze dead on. "We'll see." The tension hung in the warm air, neighbors peeking from behind curtains, drawn by the shouting but too cautious to step in. Karen turned sharply on her heel, retreating to her porch with the smug poise of someone who thought she'd won. But the set of Mrs. Harper's jaw told another story. As she carried Emma home, each step steady and sure, she thought of the black pickup truck that would pull into the cul-de-sac later, of the man who'd walk out of it with the calm authority of someone who'd seen storms thousands of feet above the earth. And for the first time since she heard her daughter cry, she almost smiled, because Emma was right, it was time to call Dad. The cul-de-sac was hushed in the hour that followed, the kind of quiet that wasn't peace but tension, the stillness of neighbors pretending they weren't watching through their blinds. Mrs. Harper sat with Emma on the couch, stroking her hair while her daughter curled against her, still trembling from the ordeal. Every so often Emma whispered, "Don't let him near me again," and each time Mrs. Harper promised, "I won't, sweetheart. Daddy's coming." When the low rumble of a truck engine broke through the silence, Emma sat up, eyes brightening despite her red cheeks. Mrs. Harper rose and looked through the window. The black pickup turned onto the street, its polished hood catching the last of the evening sun. It rolled slowly, deliberately, it tilled into Harper's driveway. The sound alone seemed to shift the air in the neighborhood. Curtains twitched, blinds shifted, and on more than one porch, neighbors stepped outside to see. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Captain Daniel Harper, still in his Delta uniform. He carried himself with the calm authority of a man who had landed planes in storms and crossed time zones while hundreds of lives depended on his hands. He didn't rush, but there was nothing casual in his stride. Each step down the driveway felt measured, his cap tucked under one arm, the faint reflection of his pilot's stripes catching the dying light. Emma bolted for the door before her mother could stop her. She flung it open and ran barefoot across the grass. "Daddy!" she cried, leaping into his arms. He caught her easily, lifting her off the ground, holding her close against his chest. For a moment he was just a father, burying his face in his daughter's hair, murmuring soft words only she could hear. Then he pulled back, eyes narrowing as he examined the faint rope burns on her wrists. His jaw tightened, the lines around his mouth hardening. He looked over her head toward the oak tree, still littered with the remnants of the jump ropes. His eyes flicked across the street, and there was Karen, standing on her porch with her arms crossed, wine glass in hand, Jacob hidden behind her legs. Mrs. Harper joined them on the lawn, her voice low but steady. She was tied to that tree. Jacob did it. Karen said it was just playing. Daniel's eyes stayed locked on Karen's, unblinking, steady, the kind of gaze that made people shift in their shoes even when he hadn't spoken. He crouched down, set Emma gently on the ground, and pulled his pocket knife from his belt. He strode to the oak tree, knelt, and cut away the last dangling rope as if removing the final insult. Then he returned to his daughter, slipping the knife back into his pocket, and took her small hand in his. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, quiet, but it carried across the keck like the steady rumble of distant thunder. "No one ties up my girl." Karen shifted on her porch, lifting her chin higher as if that would cover her discomfort. "Daniel, honestly, this has been blown out of proportion. Children play." Emma was never overreacted. If he cut her off without raising his voice, enough. The word hit harder than a shout. The neighbors edging onto porches froze, watching. Jacob shrank further behind his mother. Karen's painted smile faltered, just slightly. Daniel strained to his full height, his uniform pressed, his stance unshakable. "Your son tied up my daughter. That's not imagination. That's not boys being boys. That's cruelty." He gestured to the rope burns on Emma's wrists. This is proof." Karen tried to laugh, but it rang hollow in the evening air. "You're being dramatic. Emma will be fine. Jacob's a spirited boy. Yes, but he doesn't deserve to be painted as a monster." Daniel took a step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. He didn't tower with aggression, but with certainty, the weight of someone who had delivered bad weather reports over crackling radios and whose words were not to be debated. "You want to know what Jacob deserves?" he asked evenly. "He deserves a parent who doesn't excuse every wrong he does. Because one day, Karen, he'll do something worse, and there won't be anyone left to shield him." Karen's lips parted as if to argue, but the hush of the street pressed down on her. The neighbors were listening, all of them, for wise peeking over railings and from driveways. For once, Karen had no applause to lean on, no muttered agreements. Daniel crouched again beside Emma, smoothing a strand of hair back from her face. His voice softened for her alone. "You're safe now, kiddo. Daddy's here." She nodded, clutching his sleeve with her small hand, the tightness in her chest easing. Then he rose once more and faced Karen. "We'll be at the next meeting," he said simply. "And you'll want to be ready. Because this," he gestured to the oak, the ropes, his daughter's red wrists. "This doesn't get brushed off." Karen's face flushed, but she forced her smirk back into place, hiding behind the rim of her wine glass. She said nothing. Daniel took Emma's hand in one of his, slid his other arm around his wife's shoulders, and began walking them back toward their house. The cul-de-sac stayed silent, every neighbor watching, no one daring to breathe too loud. The only sound was the steady crunch of his boots on the pavement and Emma's soft sniffles as she clung to her father's hand. They reached the doorway. Daniel paused just long enough to glance back once more, his gaze sweeping over the street, over Karen. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Then he closed the door behind his family, leaving Karen on her porch with her son, for the first time stripped of the power she thought she held. The street remained quiet. The kind of quiet that meant change was coming, whether Karen liked it or not. Inside, Emma nestled between her parents on the couch. Daniel pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his arm wrapped protectively around her. "You did the right thing, calling for me," he whispered. Emma's tired eyes met his, a small flicker of a smile breaking through. "I knew you'd come." And with that, the storm in her little heart finally settled.